this is going to be about 2.5 hours, so I'm just going to warn you ahead of time.
Settling and laughing.
Yeah, no, they don't believe me. Oh, okay. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. No. Yeah, if you want the whole effect, you better hang around. Yeah. Now, the sound of the mic, is that working? Is that sound okay? Yeah, okay, cool. Yes, it makes me feel like I'm doing a cooking show. I got all these ingredients and all this stuff, Yeah. But part of my interest in doing this kind of a demo goes back to Sue making a comment as she was passing through my studio one day, and she complimented me on a piece I was working on, which is a rare thing because she holds her compliments, so I really believe it when she's telling me it's good. So she told me this thing, and so about 10 minutes later, that's still working, yeah. About 10 minutes later, she came by and she goes, I don't know what happened, but you lost what you had.
Oh.
I mean, really being honest, but it made us think, and we both thought about that for a second. And I thought, well, the important part is to get the gesture in so you've got a nice piece. And how about if you next time you get a really good one going, you know it's good, put it away and start over again, and then compare the two. Because one has all the loose spontaneity, the other is more refined. Refinement is really neat and nice, but it has a tendency sometimes to erase the mood of the piece. So I started getting in the habit of doing clay sketches. People say, do you sketch? I go, yeah, I'm doing clay. So that's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to do some clay sketches. I'm going to start off with actually a child, a Hopi girl, or a Navajo girl. And then it's going to go to about an 18-year-old Hopi with the squash blossoms and such. And then I'm going to end with an old warrior. Okay, it's all going to be on the same platform here. So that's the idea. Okay. All right, and armature. Okay, that's his neck. I can bend him around. Okay, so I leave it up there to move. Her head's going to be right in this area here. Of course, if I don't, yeah. And I know everything's going to really depend on. Yeah, there's always something in there. Yeah, the first time I did this at the Prix de West, I had the same kind of contraption, and Mary Nebeker kept coming up and fixing it for me. But she's not here today, so I hope yeah, where's Mary? Yeah. The other thing for people that don't know much about sculpture and bronzes, everything a person does is not the thing that you're doing. You're setting up a platform so you can make a mold. So the mold doesn't care what's inside it. So in this case, filling the piece up with tin foil and putting the tin foil in an approximate spot that I can cover with clay. In this case, it does two things. One thing, it makes it lighter. The other is that if I didn't use the tin foil, the armature will have a tendency to be poking through the clay all the time. The other part of it is important to note too is that I could be sculpting a cheese. It doesn't matter. The mold that's going to be made from this doesn't care what it's making a mold of. So what I use is an oil-based clay that's got wax in it. So it's really like wax sculpture. That's why the microwave's here. Is that it keeps it hot and or warm, and then as it cools down, it gets stiff. Okay. And a little bit of electrical tape just to keep it tight. Yeah, Doug Hyde told me a very interesting story that had to do with that same topic. He was at a school, it was up in Washington, and a Native American school of some sort, I can't remember the name, but there was a committee that was going across the country picking sculptures for an international show. And Doug was sick that day, and this is what he had on his table, was this. And it got picked. And it went around. True story, you know, it's like, okay. You know, I felt bad for him, you know, what an honor, you know, but, yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, the Frida West a while back asked me if I would do a demo, and there's sort of a rule that you read about when you're talking in front of an audience that they have 45 minutes and they're going to either leave or go to sleep. And so I thought I better do a few things to wake them up, and that's why this thing turns into 3 different things. If I could spend 2 days on the little girl part. But the key is to get it looking like it looks like something, and from a distance it's almost finished. The time it takes to put the details in is where all the time comes from. But it's funny. A lot of times the sketches are more interesting than the originals, and you know, it's just kind of how it works sometimes.
John, question. You do the same thing on the big crazy horse?
Yeah, exactly. The big version of the greeter, for instance, I never did a small version of that until recently. The big one was tinfoil and beer cans. And the reason for beer cans is, you know, they fill up a lot of volume. And I keep a pot of clay that's melted, and I dump it, stick it on, and then I get all this stuff going, and then I take a stick and I beat it down to the approximate shape. Then I put the clay on top of it. Of course, nowadays, you don't need a human being to interpret. Even if I'm the one doing the interpreting, you can have it scanned, and you can have a coffee mill make it out of foam. And about half the time I do that. And the beautiful thing about that is it's exactly what the small one was. Less the skin, so to speak. And so then you're putting in the clay and the details. And I find that method actually gives you a better sculpture or better texture than if you would have started totally from scratch. And if you're doing an accurate replica of the maquette, you can't beat it because you're not. There used to be a thing called point-up artists, and that's what they did. They would just point up work for artists and stuff. But then they would put their own interpretation on it. And you know, that could be a real problem. Okay. The other thing I need to do is set my phone out so I don't run too far out of this thing. And it's 10:43. Warm clay, it has a life. Right now it's really spongy and soft. Really good for covering an armature, not so good for putting any details in. So as it cools down, it'll get easier to work. I recall when I started getting serious about art, I used to enjoy watching demonstrations on painting and stuff. And it was always fun for about 10 minutes, and then just like, you know, because you don't know what they're doing, you know, and I always felt like, oh gosh, I don't want to bore anybody, you know, because you have these like dead spots. So I have to try to remind myself to talk while I'm working, so you know what I'm doing here. The first thing I'm going to do is, this would be the side, and the first thing I would do is I'm going to imagine the size of her head, and I'm going to sort of put, when I say sort of, very loosely put in what her profile might be like. And believe it or not, that's kind of getting where it would be. It'd be somewhere in that neighborhood there. With this part being her chin. And as I start working on the rest of this piece, this will start cooling off, and the clay will stiffen up, and it'll allow me to throw some details in. Right now it's really soft. When I was in the 8th grade, we had a little assembly in the cafeteria, and they showed us a film, just kind of out of the blue. Avard Fairbanks sculpting the life of Lincoln, and it was big. And he started off with Lincoln as a young man. He started telling the story, and with every event that happened, changed Lincoln's head, and he'd take the clay off the chin. And I was in the 8th grade, and I thought, oh my God. And I think that's probably what inspired me to be a sculptor, was that little film. I've always loved art. I was always a painter, you know, and I never thought of myself as a sculptor necessarily. And the other thing too is while I'm working, see, this is the front, this is what I'm looking at. I need to make sure that I move around once in a while. How's the camera doing? Yeah, the camera's coming from there. Okay, so that would be the front of it. Okay. If I need to turn it, you know, if somebody can yell at me, that'd be okay. Just turn it. So we're into it for, what time did we start exactly? I guess I don't have that number.
10:43.
7:43. A lot of the pieces that I do, I sketch in I determine the size of the piece by using tinfoil. My 1876, the one with the 3 warriors, I never did a maquette of that. I started with the middle size, and Sue and I just got a bunch of tinfoil, and I started mocking it up in tinfoil to see what the scale would look like. And so it gave me exactly the information I needed. You know, within a couple hours, I knew exactly what size it should be. And so it's, you know, it's interesting how something that simple can accomplish so much. And while I'm fussing around with this stuff, does anybody have a question so far?
Where do you get your clay?
Yeah, there's a place in Tempe called Reynolds Materials. And the company that makes this clay, they call it Classic. It's been around for a long time. It's basically, the technical name for it, I guess, is plastiline. And it comes in different stiffnesses. Artists, usually when they start off, they have a tendency to make their clay too stiff. And it's hard to get a rough in like this.
John, after all these years, have you had any problems with your hands?
Yeah, I'm at that age, I get arthritis, It's not bad arthritis, but it does. This hand will cramp up. I first noticed it when I was teaching a workshop and my hand wouldn't work. And I went, oh no, yeah. So, it's life, right? Yeah.
What do you do when you have an extended hand like that? Is that a separate piece?
Oh yeah. It's a, you do a little Gumby sketch and you get your design down, and then you understand what your pieces are going to be like.
Do you change stiffnesses as you progress through a piece, or with different size pieces?
The stiffnesses of the clay, you mean?
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, I use the sock for everything.
Okay.
How do you get the three different sizes of your bronzes to be absolutely identical to each other?
Well, they're not quite identical.
And they're,
Is the thing still working? Yeah, okay. It's not quite identical, but proportional calipers, okay? That would be my head. I don't know if it's set for this or not. Yeah, it's almost set for that. Well, this is a little girl's head, so. But see, and this is what I use for my models and stuff, it's just, you just point it off. It's called pointing because it's, there's certain places.
What inspires you to start a new piece?
Yeah, great question. Every piece I've done usually leads me to another version of something else. I have my favorites, but I remember Picasso had a kind of a cool quote. He said, "To copy another artist is a crime, but to copy yourself is a sin." And of course, coming from him, I don't know, but I do think about that. And so, what inspires another piece is whether or not the next piece is going to augment my body of work so far. My show, for instance, here I've got hardcore male. I needed a little girl, so I did the little girl. So that balanced my show out. Okay, so now at this point right here, believe it or not, I've kind of got the remnants of her skull there a little bit. And so what I'm going to do, and again, I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. Maybe I'm working on the wrong, maybe I should have my back to you a little bit. All right, just going to remember this pointer over there. Is it working okay so far now? You're saying? Okay. All right, and her mouth is going to be right in here somewhere. Her head's going to slope back like that.
John, that Avard Fairbanks video or?
Yeah.
Have you chased that down? Do you know if that's still available?
Yeah, internet, I did see reference to it, yeah. But I haven't seen it in a long time, but I was sure impressed with that guy. What he did was amazing. He's influenced a lot of artists. Okay, I'm gonna sort of, I use the word sort of a lot, but that means I'm not sure what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm just gonna, at this point, it's very early, but I'm gonna kind of mark where her eyes will be. Can anybody see that? See how I got that one eye started? So I'm looking at his forehead, or her forehead, and I'm thinking of 6 years old, a Navajo little girl, and her mouth is going to come out a little bit further than, say, an Anglo kid might. And because of her age, the thing that's going to separate her from a woman is that the bottom part of her face is smaller in relationship to her skull. And you don't need to be understand anatomy to know that whether that's right or wrong. You just feel it. And the other thing that's important is I can't go too far on the front of the head until I fix everything, most everything that's wrong with the back of the head. Even though it's going to be covered, basically, but I want her to be, her head to be kind of locked in, pointing at me, her back of her head close to where I need to be. People talk about models and such, but if you aesthetically understand what makes a person look like a person, and what most people will feel right about, you can use a basic canon, and that is like on a head. An adult, their eyes are usually in the middle. The widest part of the head is right back here. And so you just kind of remember those kinds of things. And the shape of the head is, there's a kind of a plane right here, and then the high point of the skull is right here. So as I'm roughing this thing in, I'm kind of thinking about that.
What's the hardest part of the human anatomy to make look reasonable?
The forehead. Yeah, the forehead. Because they don't have obvious markers, and you'll feel it. Which is harder, an old man or a child to sculpt? A child's way harder. Oh man, wrinkles, and symmetry doesn't have to be right, There's lots of good. No, in your mind's eye, you'll accept all of that. Yeah.
When you get inspired to do a subject, how do you choose which medium you're gonna
Yeah, well, my main thing is charcoal for me is mostly like doing sculpture, because there's no color. So I'll have a tendency if I do a sculpture that I like and I want to do it in 2 dimensions, I'll usually think in terms of I wonder if that light is in the right spot.
I was wondering about light direction.
Yeah. You see, the thing is why I've got this right now is that the light will stay pretty much the same. If the light's coming up from somewhere else, it'll change the way this looks, and it'll throw me off when I'm working on it. Yeah, so as I'm working, I want to make sure that it's close. Hopefully it's not going to matter a lot anyway, because as soon as I get this reasonably done, I'm going to turn her into something else. But hopefully you guys will think what I did was okay.
What other facial features are you focusing on to distinguish her as a Navajo?
Yeah, another great question. mostly, when in children it's kind of hard to tell, but a little wider on the nose. The mouth is going to be bigger. And the way the profile is going to be, her mouth's going to be out somewhere out in here, kind of. But it's going to be small. She's going to have a button nose, she's a child, so her nose is going to be kind of small. Yeah, like so. And then she's got her lip is kind of, this would be the top of her mouth. The distance from the chin to the bottom of the nose on a child, of course, is smaller, so there's not as much room there. I'm kind of going to lay that out. And we established it. We started this at 10:43. Was that it? Okay, so I've been on this for almost a half hour. Yeah. So I'm going to give myself an hour on her. So that means that I've got another 30 minutes or so. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to the other thing. So I'll see how far I can get in that amount of time. So,
You always stand when you work?
yeah.
If you were in the studio working on this piece, typically how long do you stay with it?
I usually stay with my work until I can't see it again anymore, and that's really not very long. My routine is soon I have a tendency, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, we get up really early, and I just can't. I go to bed early, and so I'm up in my studio in my robe, usually around 4 o'clock, something like that, and I'll look at what I did the night before, and the expression that fits that the best for me is nose blind. Everybody knows what nose blind is, you know. Well, nose blind is when you come in contact with an odor, your brain tells you it's dangerous, stay away from it, okay? If you stay with it though, your mind will shut it off. With art, you have the same problem visually. And so artists are having to constantly reset their brain. And the best way to do it, of course, is if you can get away from it. So I take that best time in the morning and when I go to work, and then
Do you always stand when you sculpt?
I've tried to sit. I can't because I mean the main thing is I've got to be here. Of course, I'm locked in, but I've got to be able to stand back. So.
So in your large pieces, you have scaffolding, you have a ladder, how do you handle that?
Yeah, the nice thing about the magic of doing a big sculpture is if you have a maquette, you've already got your design in, so you can sculpt the big sculpture in pieces. And I may not see the big piece until it's almost finished. And then I will find a real tall area, and I will build it. I'll put it together like an erector set. But I already know what it looks like because I did the maquette, I did the small piece.
Do you work on one piece to conclusion, or do you have more pieces going and you go back and forth?
It kind of depends on my endurance and what I'm excited about. And if a piece is giving me trouble, I'll have a tendency to kind of abandon it for a while. It's like right now I'm fussing with this light. Yeah, because one side of her face is in the shadow, and it shouldn't be like that. But I'll just continue on. Okay, kind of a mouth, kind of a nose, kind of where an eye is, all right? And so my next step is gonna put in a little more detail to these things. I'm gonna put in where her chin would be. What makes her a child mostly is she's got chubby cheeks.
Do you take into consideration the emotion that you're trying to portray the whole way through the sculpting process?
The first thing is structure. If the structure's wrong, it wrecks everything. It's a sour note in an otherwise beautiful symphony. A sour note is something that's out of congress with the intent or the feel of the piece. Then you put the goosebump factor in, where all of a sudden you've got everything right, now you can be emotional. Then you can bring the emotions in. But if the piece isn't right to begin with, you're never going to get the emotions right.
Is that the same with a charcoal drawing?
Yeah, it is. We all have a feeling of what is right and wrong. One of my examples was, when I'm teaching sculpture, I happen to be 5.5 feet tall and I've got a really big head. Okay, maybe I don't look like I have a big head, but my head's the same size as my buddy who's 6'4". If I did a sculpture of each one of us, you would know that he was really tall and I'm kind of short. Okay, the reason being is the head height. Everybody has a sense about what that looks like and what it's about. So, if that structure isn't right, it's not going to read right. All right. Trying to figure out. I need to take a second. I'm going to readjust my light here. No, I'm gonna, as soon as I find that sweet spot, I'll be good.
While John's doing that, I want to make a couple comments. My father-in-law started the first gallery in Scottsdale here. That was going back, my mother and father-in-law. That was in the early 60s. And my father-in-law was asked to judge a show called the Fippen Show, which is in Prescott. It's been going on for how many years, John? 50 years?
Yeah, it's been 50 years, yeah.
My father-in-law saw John's work. John had just started sculpting, at that time only sculpting, and my father-in-law recognized the talent and the quality, and for an artist that had only done, at that point, a handful of pieces. My father-in-law started representing him right next door to the gallery that was down and on this side, on the Scottsdale Road side. And I used to go in and admire what John could do. The first thing I always looked at was hands and faces. Hands in particular. Hands seem to be a real stumbling block for artists. And then just simply the overall understanding of the anatomy of the body. He captures it with the proper gesture. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. But when you analyze a lot of sculpture, you'll notice that some look awful stiff. They're not relaxed and stuff. So I started admiring John's work many years before we had the opportunity to represent it. Then what happened was my father-in-law ultimately sold their gallery, and then we had the opportunity to represent John. And that goes back 20 years?
Yeah, 20 years, yeah, or better, yeah, 20, yeah.
And John, John was really our first, we do a lot of big one-man shows. And John was really our first big one. We did one in Jackson Hole for a sculptor named Tim Schenneberger. It was very successful. But there it mixed in the gallery. Here we had this whole room here. And John brought us 20 pieces. In fact, he was committed to bringing 20 pieces. I had told him he needed to bring 20 pieces. He was committed to bringing 20 pieces. He finished the last one in his hotel room here so that he could say he did accomplish 20 pieces. That show was so successful, and we're so blessed. That show, and I think it did 1.3 million. Is that right?
Yeah, that's about right for the first one,
You
yeah.
might remember it.
Yeah.
But it sent like a shockwave throughout the industry. Like one artist could do in one show 1.3 million. And it was really fun. It was very enjoyable to work with John and Sue on it. It was challenging, but John brought us an incredible body of work. It was actually the first time that we had the opportunity as Legacy Gallery to represent any of his paintings. Needless to say, it was a complete sellout. And so it took us, 4 years later, we did another one-man show. And it just, when you do something the second time around, sometimes you're a little concerned, will it live up to what the first show did? Well, it just blew away the first show. Did over $2 million in one show with 20 pieces. We had one large piece, there's a small version of it downstairs called He Who Jumps. And we had 5 to sell, and all 5 of that edition sold out that night. And that was $100,000 and some piece, so needless to say that kind of helped us get those numbers where they were. But both shows, needless to say, were 100% sellouts. But we're blessed and have the opportunity to represent John. You're seeing a true master. You're seeing a true master at work here. So thank you for letting me interject that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm going to complain about my life, but that's just me making an excuse why I can't get this work where I want it.
Can you describe your relationship with your foundries?
Yeah, I can. One of the keys to my success had to do with my search for a patina artist, because I was doing all my own patinas, and I had a special look that I was doing, and I interviewed, oh gosh, how many, maybe 10 different guys across the country, and I knew that I couldn't keep doing it myself because I didn't have any time to sculpt. And ultimately what happened was, there was a young man who I had known that worked for a local foundry. He came by one day and he said, I'm thinking about starting my own business, and well, could I have your work? Can I do your work? And so I gave him a piece to test, and I showed him my patina I put on it. And I was blown away because I thought his looked better than mine. So I thought, oh my God, you know. That was an interesting story because it's what happens in those moments is that you're faced with somebody who you should be jealous of, and it's painful, but on the other end, what a gift. It means I can quit doing this. I can have him do it. And so he took over my studio, and along with that, he brought some of his people. Kristen is in the. If anybody's got any foundry questions, boy, this is a lady. She worked on all my pieces, but Eric was kind of hesitant, and so I said, look, let me just let you have all my material, and I'll give you a spot in the back of my studio. And he got into business, and that's. I'm going to say it's probably been 20 years now. Does that sound about right? Yeah. And so that ties into the foundry because, you know, he's got this great team. Kristen is one of the keys to that. And I always say your name wrong, don't I?
I think you say Kristen.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I've known this lady for a long time, and. It's a miracle because nobody else has what I have because I can cast my work anywhere in the country. It comes back to Eric, and his team does all the work, and they're within 10 minutes of my house. So it's not a normal foundry situation.
And he certainly is eye candy.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing that's interesting about Eric is that his ego should be a lot bigger than it is because he's got kind of a movie star kind of persona. But is that still working? See, I need Mary Nebeker here.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, we're at, according to my time thing here, I got 15 minutes to make this look a little bit more like a little girl.
John, when your piece is complete and to your liking and ready for the next step, what are the next steps?
The first thing I have to think about is how this is going to get a mold made from it and whether it needs to be made in pieces. And is this damn thing still working? Okay, that sounds different to me. But you can still hear me okay? Good, I'll leave it alone. Okay. It's always a battle to what's going to happen when it comes to bronze. It's always going to be different than the clay.
John,
Yes.
I've noticed a lot of artists struggle with hair because it doesn't, our hair is naturally somewhat light.
Yeah.
And that when you sculpt it and you cast it in bronze, it doesn't have the illusion of light, of being light. It's bulky, it's heavy, it feels like a hat sometimes.
Yeah. The key to sculpting is that you're dealing with shapes, and clay is opaque. If you're doing something in marble, it's translucent, and you can probably do hair that is a little bit more like what you see. But I'm going to put her hair on in just a second, and I'll show you. The other thing that makes her a child is usually the forehead, they've got this, the forehead's pretty round.
John, most of your little girls are about the same age. How did you pick that particular age?
Yeah, that's a good question too, isn't it? 5, 6, they're old enough to be involved in certain ceremonies and stuff, and they're very relatable. I happen to be a grandfather, and I guess when I first started doing this stuff, it was the age of some of my grandfathers or my grandchildren. And the subject matter. When you look at what I've never really actually sculpted a baby before. Babies are really way different. But to put them in a certain context. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wish this was a little bit better, but I'm going to move. And I'm going to put the hair on real quick. And I'm going to throw some ears on her. Children's ears, most adults, their ears line up with the top of their eyebrow. Children's ears kind of drop down a little bit. And let's see, how much time have I got on there? Yeah, running a little late. Gotta have the ears though.
Favorite subject matter to sculpt, or does it change?
Well, it's masculine, feminine stuff, and I do, it depends on how I'm feeling or what's going to balance me out. I have 2 daughters, and when the grandkids started coming, it was, I was very interested in what it was all about from a woman's point of view or a girl's point of view. One of my first pieces that I really enjoyed doing was Creation Passing, which was the Apache's puberty rite. And it was done at a time when my girls were teenagers, or becoming teenagers, and I was worried about their boyfriends. And I thought, isn't that cool that there's a culture that celebrates that time of their life where they're a girl, then they become a woman. And that always struck me, and I just started getting into the whole mythology of the women and changing woman, and to give birth to the 2 opposing males. So you have the son of the sun, which is a mighty warrior, and then you have the son of a moon, which is a mystic or a medicine man. And she was born out of an abalone shell, and of course mythology is always the key for me. And Native American mythology always touches on the same stuff the Greeks touched on. It's always kind of the same thing. They've got the same kinds of stories. And of course, we live now in a deal where there's this argument about who's better, a man or a woman. And of course, I don't care. But the fact is the universe doesn't allow things to be off balance. There's 2, and black is just as important as white. In the terms from the painter's point of view. You've got cool colors and you've got warm colors. It's ludicrous to think that one thing would be stronger or better than the other. They're just different. And so I've found, and I happen to be married to a very strong woman who is mostly smarter and stronger than I am. And so automatically I kind of gravitate to that part. Okay, now I'm going to throw some hair on her. Kind of what Brad was talking about. Her part is going to be right in this area here, and her hair is going to come down. And it's not literally hair. Every time I make a line in it, I'm making a black mark. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that or not. See it? hair's not gonna have a lot of black marks. It's gonna be a change in shape. Part of her hair is gonna come down in front of her ear, and it's gonna trail off like that a little bit. I can suggest where shape of her ear by doing that. Her hair's gonna fall down behind her ear. And she's gonna have her hair tied in the back. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. Typical of the little Navajo girl.
John,
Yes.
would it be okay before you transition, because you're gonna take this little girl into
Yes.
old lady, to give
All right,
everybody.
like an 18-year-old is what I'm gonna do, yeah. Yeah.
If they want to get up out of their seat.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea, sure.
Yeah, because the camera does well, but it would be better for them if they want to see it up close.
Yeah,
Before
yeah.
you make the transition.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, what I'm looking at, it doesn't look good at all, but whatever, yeah, that'd be fine. So I said I was gonna do the hair, but I can't do the hair until I understand where the shoulders are falling. Because I don't want her head to be on a stick. You know, so she's got, and as certain parts are correct, like Richard Schmidt was talking about how to draw something, and it's kind of a basic thing. He said if you put two things that are right, you just put something else next to it, and you'll see immediately whether it's right or not too. But if you have two things that are wrong, you're never going to get the right. So it's the same thing. So as I get this, then I automatically also know where this is. You see? And because her chin is going to stick out to that level, about right there, it means that the back, now her neck is too thick, so I need to make sure I bring that in a little bit. Get her neck approximately where it would be.
At this point, can you still change the orientation of the head, or?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I'm going to show you that in a second. That's a good one, yeah. And the direction of her hair is headed back to this. These are like little ropes. They're tied around, you know, like yarn. And her hair is heading in that headed towards that where that's tied. And so on the back of her neck, their hair is going up. This is coming back, but everything kind of accumulates in the back like that. And so, being that this is a sketch, I'm not too worried if the head isn't perfect and stuff, but I always notice too that when I start to finish something up or I stand back and look at it, I can't look at it until I've corrected some of those mistakes. Because that's all I can see is a mistake. This side of her head is not wide enough. You can see it, so I do more of it.
John, have you ever had a piece that's haunted you where there's a mistake out there and you see it every now and then?
Yeah, and see, that's really a painful but very good thing. It really is. The key is to understand. I've heard people talk about inviting an artist over for dinner, and the guy would go out to his car and come back with his oil paint and start work on the painting that was in the dining room. You know, and I go, yeah, I relate to that. You know, God, you can fix it. Yeah, and when I'm teaching, sometimes people will ask, well, can you critique my work for me? And I said, well, is it cast in bronze? And they go, yeah. And I said, well, I can't do that because you'd just be tormented by it. Like, only if you would have made that eye, like this. Yeah.
Do you find it hard when you're doing a sketch that you're doing now, not to continue to try to perfect it?
Yeah, you see, I think I'm out of time, but yet I'm still fussing with it. Because I do want to get to that, I want to do just a couple little things so I can, and then she's wearing a traditional top, which has a collar. Let me just suggest that collar real quick. There's her collar. And then she'd have a little piece of jewelry at the bottom of it. And then she had a little smile or the direction of her eye, or wherever they're going. But see, then it's kind of a, looking behind her a little bit, see? Yeah. Looking up, looking down, turn to the head, and that's the reason I start to put in the body. And I don't have much of a body here, but you can start to see the plane of her shoulders.
John, is it okay if they start walking up?
Yeah. Let's take a look at this. So otherwise, I'll be.
I'd like to ask is there's a camera over there videoing on the right side, so just don't interfere with that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anybody want to come up and take a look at this? That'd be great. Yeah, she's gonna go. She's gonna be a Hopi maiden. I'm gonna make her about 17, 18 years old. Yeah. I'm widening out the eyes just a bit. I'm bringing up the nose. I've brought the chin back down. The face is going to be generally wider. Of course, her ears are back and they're bigger. Don't lose your arm. Yeah. I did actually take an anatomy courses when I got started. The kind that physical therapists and stuff might take. But anatomy is akin to the keys on the piano. It's nice to know where they're at before you hit them. And it's the same kind of a thing. I'm constantly battling the semantics of being able to talk about structure and the accuracy, and then also talk about art, because they're kind of two different things. The structure is part of the vocabulary to bring you to the art, where sometimes, like Picasso, he had a different way of dealing with stuff, but he still had to do with the aesthetics of things. But he could draw something realistic if he wanted to, but that wasn't his thing. But once you start down a certain road, you have to stay with that point, or it breaks. Because going back to music, there's the sour note, and there's the thing that's so cool you get chills. They both are created by the same thing. They're both an anomaly that happens. So if your anatomy is off, it's okay if it's all off a little bit. I was talking with Morgan Wiesling a while back, and he was telling me Ian Situ and him were talking about his painting coming into San Francisco Harbor. And he said, in order to get, because there's all these, I don't know if you guys can remember the painting, but there's all these people on the ship, and they're all huddled around and looking out to the harbor as it comes in. So there's all these figures, and the models for that all came into the studio as individuals, and then he put them in place. And he said the key to that was to make them all a little bit wrong. And I thought, yeah, that's what you would do. Purposely, you make them off a little bit. So your eye isn't stuck. You don't have an example of what's right. They're all off a little bit. Now everybody, you know, that's. Didn't I say me in situ? No, I talked to Morgan Weasley about me in situ. Yeah. Because we were having a discussion, and he was telling me, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just kind of getting some of the general shapes. The chin is going to be down here. The mouth, start to put. And a lot of times, even if I make a mark, and it's not going to be what I'm really going to end up with, it helps me understand what's going on next to it and whether what's going on next to it is right or wrong, even if I have to cover it up. So kind of putting in the basic shape of the mouth. I'm going to drop her mouth down a little bit, and how I just do this, just start to move the line down a little bit.
Do you have days when you work on the sculpture and then go back to painting and then
It's kind of, yeah, it is like that, actually, yeah, it is. Mainly because they create different kinds of the messes are different. You know, I've got an area in my studio that's mostly for clay, and the clay is hell on drawing.
Are the vast majority of your sculptures Native Americans?
Yeah, that goes back to the mythology thing for me. You know, if you're a realist and you create a narrative in your work, it helps if you actually are a pseudo-expert in your subject matter. So to be a pseudo-expert in Native Americans, as an example, or mythology or whatever, you have to pick something. And Lewis and Clark, you know, in 1804, and then Carl Bodmer and George Catlin, 1833, were documenting tribes that were a little bit different than what most people would see later in the movies. The Custer Battle is 1876. The people looked a little different, but they're flamboyant and interesting to do. And the events and all the little storylines are written somewhere. So a lot of times people have a knowledge of those things, meaning that I can give a more vague, symbolic visual, and then they can complete the story because they already know it. You know, I think on the tour the other day I was doing the Shakespeare analogy, and it's not that I'm a Shakespeare guy necessarily, but I love the idea that everybody knows that Romeo and Juliet were two teenagers who were opposing families and they couldn't be together. And then the line was just basically, oh, she's out on the balcony, and he says, oh, she touches her face. And then the next line is to be a glove. So what you can interpret that is that he wants to be with her, but he'd also give his life up for her. And Shakespeare didn't have to say anything other than that. But that's what was brilliant, is because we already know the backstory. He doesn't have to go over the backstory again. So anytime you can do something like the Native Americans, we live in this country where everybody knows something about Native Americans, or they think they, everybody's seen the war bonnet, everybody's seen the pipe, and so it gives me an opportunity to be more eloquent in that I can edit my work down to basic things. It's like the little girl is really a Navajo as soon as I put that thing in the tie her a certain way. And so that kind of helps the story.
Are there significant facial feature differences between the various tribes?
The basic difference basically is, and this goes back, everybody has their own stories about it, but when those anthropologists started taking the DNA from Africa and going around the circumnavigation in the world, they came up through the Asian countries and stuff, and went up through Alaska to the Inuit, then came back to the Navajo, and they showed the Navajo of all the pictures that they took along the way, and they said, these are your people, and the Navajo said, no, they're not our people, but I can see why you would say that, because they look just like us. The Asian thing for the Navajos is they look a lot like the Inuit, but see, this goes back to the theory of the Bering Strait and coming over from Asia. Now as you get to the Midwest, now you're getting into the African cultures, you're getting into the French, the Italian, and so there's more of a melting pot. And so a lot of the Native Americans still have that Asian look. As an artist, I kind of brand my work by having certain traits that might be a little bit over the top, cheekbones, His face is definitely influenced by what I consider a stereotypical tough Indian, handsome Indian guy. I want it to still be something that I did, and I don't want to copy, but generally speaking, the signs of a strength, a big jaw, powerful, bigger teeth, kind of give you that feeling of you're an imposing character. And that's kind of a generalization of what a Native American man would look like. If he was a Navajo, his face would be flatter probably, his nose wouldn't be as big, he'd be a little more, his eyes would be a little more hooded, and that triggers, I'm not saying that's 100% accurate, what I'm saying is it triggers your mood and your feeling about what you're looking at. It's like my analogy of Eric and I standing next to each other. He's a foot taller than I am, but our heads are the same size. So in a sculpture, the trigger is going to be the head. So and that's all I'm interested in, is getting that part right. And so it's reasonable and it feels right. It's like my expert that helps me with whether or not I'm doing justice to my subject matter, may or not be 100% accurate, but it's like it almost doesn't matter because he's so well respected that what he says is gospel. And if I did something wrong, he would be the one to heckle me on it. It's always about respect. How do you respect your subject matter? I respect my subject matter first by acknowledging I don't know the first thing about being an Indian. But I do know the first thing about being an American. And I do know that the Native American culture has really had a profound effect on all of us. But most of the mythology that I'm interested in, you can find in Star Wars. Yeah, George Lucas hired Joseph Campbell, and Joseph Campbell did The Power of the Myth and we're talking about the Greeks mostly, but all that mythology always comes back to the same kinds of things. And the tribal people, the Native American people, had these wonderful stories, and the stories all help their young people, or all of them, how to survive. Okay, I'm going to reread her mouth a little bit.
Excuse me, do you have a question Do you have an aha moment when you know you just got it right for yourself?
Yeah, I do. It doesn't happen while I'm working usually. It happens when I come back and look at it again. Yeah, that's why I like to go to the studio in the morning, early. And I look at what I did the day before, and I've already warned myself. I already know that I'm not going to like what I see. If I do, it's like, wow, wow, how did I do that? That's nice.
How many times a day do you assess that, or is it just once a day?
Oh no, I assess it over and over again. Yeah, one of the things, I was talking about my dyslexia. I'm also a recovering alcoholic, okay, which means that I'm prone to addiction. I haven't had a drink in 40 years, but that's benefited me because I understand how my mind works. A lot of people don't ha-ha moments, it's like I know that if I take a shot of whiskey, there's not enough whiskey in the world that's going to make me feel good. I'm addicted. Although I kind of do that with my art, and then I have to negotiate that with my wife. We talk about it every day, practically. Like, okay, all right, yeah, okay. I gotta tell you though, next time I do, my next demo, I'm gonna make sure my light is better. What's happening here is my light in my studio is augmenting this, and right now it's kind of fighting it. But we're doing okay though. We're talking about stuff, and you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. All right, then the nose. Let's bring her nose up a little bit.
John, as you're working on a sculpture piece or a painting piece, do you have a list of your next paintings you want to start, or your next bronzes?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a list, but it's sort of it's a review of some of the things that I've been wanting to do, and whether or not if they're going to fit into my life at that moment. Yeah, I do. I always have to have something to look forward to, and then I'll kind of go over them with Sue, and she'll tell me whether I'm being corny or whatever. She's usually pretty good at that, and she's got really good taste, and she'll usually tell me that maybe what my idea is maybe overdone. I shouldn't be doing that. The He Who Jumps is a good example of a piece that I wanted to do when I first started sculpting, and because there's one downstairs that's going to be in the auction. If you guys don't know which one piece that is, but it's a rearing horse with a really flamboyant character on top, and it's just screams. It's just got so much testosterone and angst in it, and it was basically an account that Catlin had about an Indian chief who was so bonded to his horse. Not only was he a great horseman and could do all these crazy tricks, but he also made a eagle feather bonnet for his horse. So they're both wearing eagle bonnet horse, and it's just too good. And I really love that. And there's a little watercolor of it that he did. And I thought one of these days I'm going to do it. But if I do it too early, I don't have the cred, and it'll look corny or something, or be too flamboyant. So I waited a while, and then finally when I did it, it was like super home run. Now the problem though is that Sue will come in sometimes. If I want to do something like it, she'll remind me that I already went there before, and I can't go back. So I'll ask permission from Sue, and so she is always very careful about telling me what's right and what's wrong. If you're teaching somebody art, it's you're talking about a hell of a lot more things than just art. You're talking about attitudes about stuff. What I'm doing right now is I'm moving this nose over. I realize I put it in the wrong spot. Okay.
What's your favorite piece you completed?
Yeah, my favorite. Honeymoon at Crow Fair is probably one of my favorites. I don't know if it's the favorite, but it's one of them. And 1876, Gall Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull. the ones that are my favorites are the ones that are gifts that came from out, from I don't know where. They just came from someplace else. I didn't know they were gonna be good. I think I might have mentioned to somebody when we were talking about, I made a crow fair. I had my granddaughter, model, and then she showed me how she would snuggle up to her boyfriend, and I didn't know that that was what was going to be a key to that piece, and it turned out it was like a gift.
Do you budget your time as far as choosing a project, figuring how much time it's gonna take you to complete it?
Yeah, in a way I do. Yeah. When I was active in the CA, I did 7 pieces a year for the CA. And some of the shows don't mind if you bring the same piece to that you've done, but the CA at that time especially, it all had to be all new work. And that was pretty neat because it really made me work at it.
How many sketches or studies do you make before a big piece or project?
It's a little bit hard to answer because I get an idea in my head and I can start to visualize whether it's going to be a good idea or not even before I put any clay down on it. So it's just a matter of whatever it takes or whatever starts to feel good. I think I was telling some of you when I was doing 1876, I wasn't sure what size to make it, so Sue and I got out the tinfoil and I started sculpting copies of what I had in my head out of tinfoil, and we arrived at the right size. It didn't take very long. So it was, but it's not always going to be like that.
Hey, John?
Yes.
What was the subject? I'm trying to remember. You explained when you first started, when you were watching the movie, they were sculpting something. What was that subject? Was that a Native American?
Were you talking about the Avard Fairbanks thing? Yeah, no, that was Lincoln.
That's right.
That was a head of Lincoln this size. Yeah.
Your personal thoughts on it. What do you think this passion we have, this fascination with this Native American subject, when did it happen for you? How did this come?
Well, from my childhood, I've always had an analytical approach to the universe and religion, basically. And my parents weren't religious; they didn't go to church or anything like that. But I was always fascinated by the difference between the literal interpretation of something and the spiritual mood and feeling of it. And I started noticing that other cultures, when I discovered Joseph Campbell, I discovered that what's called mythology, from his perspective, was morality tales that guys like Aristotle and stuff would do, like the Odyssey. They're talking about a trip, where you go out to sea and you've got to do all these things. And what didn't mean to go 20 years, but they ran into the Cyclops. Or how did they know that was Poseidon's son? And they poked his eye out, and then he yelled out, "Who did this to me?" And his Ulysses' ego was such that he said it was I, and he gave him his address. And that's so typical of people. So the idea of what religion to me, or mythology and all that, they're all stories that give you an image in your mind. Obviously there's no Cyclops, and it sounds all far-fetched and all, but yet the fact is I can't tell you how many times I've given somebody my address because of my big ego, and I should have just kept my mouth shut. and that's what these things are about. So I've always been fascinated. As an artist, I started gravitating towards artists that have that talk of mythology, which is 90%. It seems like to me. You know, I look around this room, and all this stuff has a feeling and a meaning to it that that I could write a story about. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Yeah. It gave me an opportunity to have a soapbox, so to speak. You know, and of course, going back to dyslexia and all that kind of stuff, I don't write and I don't read very well, but I visually can put all that energy into my visual stuff, and I feel like I can tell some stories that are bigger. And especially when I learned that the work is not for me, it's for the audience. So you're giving something to the audience. So it's literally like you're building a theater and charging people admission to come in to see your show. And they actually appreciate what you're showing. And it's a pretty crazy thing, right? You know. So the storyline though has to be universal. We've got a great grandson that he's about 6 months now. Is he 6 months? Okay, time flies. But you know, and then we also, his sister, she's 4, and I know that they're going to be way different, but yet they're going to be the same because they both came out of me on some level. But see, to me, that's what it's all about. It's not about how different we are; it's how much alike we all are. Of course, we're all very protective. That's why I'm not talking about politics right now. You know, and I really don't care. You know, but I know that we all want the same thing, and we all want to be able to provide for ourselves and have our own egos and be able to share. Sharing with other people is like the ultimate. And it sounds kind of vague, but I think every artist that has an opportunity to share something that's the big key. And you can make a living on top of that. That's even better. So instead of being commercial about my work, I made up this thing where I want a destination for my work. So I didn't have to say I want to sell it. I want a destination for it. And the destination is not my closet. You know? Hopefully a great museum, but if not that, at least a collector. Okay. All right, so. What makes her a Hopi? Yeah, I know I'm running way over. What do we got here? Okay, so when did I start? I started at 10:30. Yeah. So when was this supposed to end? Dan? I remember I'm dyslexic. I got an excuse to ask that question. Huh?
5 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So it's right now. It's noon. 12:30.
No, it's 12:40. No,
Yeah. So that would be 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock is 2.5 hours. Yeah. Okay. So I've got an hour. Okay. That's all I'm trying to get to. Yeah. And it's funny. It's funny because it sounds silly when I ask those kinds of questions. If you ask me what month it is or what the next month is, it takes me a long time to figure that out. This is my way my brain works. Yeah, the alphabet, forget about it. I don't know what the alphabet is.
Do you ever have any happy accidents that happen and, it was in a certain spot that wasn't supposed to be?
Yeah, that's a good one, all the time.
Do you allow that to influence your,
Yes, all the time, because that comes from someplace else. Things like that are very important. Well, see, that's the key is that it's not a thing, it's a journey, right? It sounds like a cliche, but it sounds like a cliche, but you're moving to a place that's beyond where you were before, and it's like life is like, it's like a ladder. The view is different on the first rung, and it changes as you go up. And so your opinion is more powerful once you've had a few lessons, and your lessons come from where you started from. Then you make a judgment on it. So a happy accident, is not really, it's the residue of the journey, basically. And you start making decisions on whether you want to quit or not. And you assess that whether or not it's worth it, that where you've been.
Do you ever quit on pieces, or do you work all the way through the problem until they're solved?
Some pieces have obvious problems that can be solved, and some of them are just bad ideas. And I think it's a very powerful thing to be able to give up and say, you know what, that was a bad idea. And just because the time invested in something it isn't worth it,
John, for the first part of your career, you did primarily sculpting, then you started painting. What effect does the sculpting have on your painting, and conversely, what effect has the painting had on your sculpting?
Yeah, it really, it ties into that. You put something down and it tells you what your next move needs to be. When I'm doing a sculpture, I'm really practicing for a painting. I mean, there's so much similarities, but I'm getting it from a different angle, from a different perspective. Speaking of Star Wars, see, Princess Leia is what I'm doing here. Squash blossoms. The Hopi, when they become a marrying age, this is how you know they're ready. They can be married. Is they put their hair up in these squash blossoms. And I know that that's what Lucas had in mind when he did the Princess Leia thing. He must have been doing that.
When can we expect some Star Wars sculptures?
Yeah. I think Lucas would probably get mad at me for that. But in the interviews with Joseph Campbell on the subject and stuff, but he was the technical advisor for a lot of that, and I love all the symbolic nature of it.
When I hear you speak and tell you stories, and what I realize that Sue is probably the real artist, and you're just
You're just the hired hand.
But that's a fact. It is so true. It's so funny, yeah. Yeah, what she's able to detect in my work is always amazing, because she said she's not an artist. I've never seen her do any art. And it's like, wow, how does that happen? I don't know.
That may be why sometimes in the morning you walk in the studio and it looks really good.
Yeah. No, I mean, Yeah, you know, that's a possibility, isn't it? And I've always said, I thought, wouldn't that be funny? It'd be funny if she actually was a better artist than me. She just doesn't want to hurt my feelings. I've always said that.
We all know that behind every good man is a good woman and a surprise mother-in-law.
Yeah, surprise mother-in-law. Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. That's a good one. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You know, we met when we were, you were kids. You know, we knew each other, knew of each other in junior high school. We dated in high school. We've been married 55 years now, and my life would have been completely different. I can't even imagine what my life would have been like. But we definitely, our personalities hooked together so well that in our past life in business and stuff, it went well, and then we've taken that into the art world. That's the reason I came up with the idea of the destination instead of being commercial. Because when I first started, it was you hear a lot of artists talking about selling out and doing work for yourself and don't listen to your collectors and all that kind of stuff, And I thought, well, it's like putting on a Broadway show and you've got a marquee outside that people want to know what they're going to see. There's nothing wrong with that. And then I kind of use Sue as a sounding board. Now, there's a couple of things, if I had more time, I could make her a couple of years older. What's happening here is which is fine, because that still fits the narrative. These little girls can be 12 years old. I mean, it sounds kind of young to be varying age, but they're pretty young. She's a little bit younger than what I wanted her to be, but I don't have time to fix her up, make her older, so she's kind of in that range. Okay, now, the next thing that happens is that they have a traditional robe that they wear, which is sort of the classic. That's a Hopi girl, that's how you can tell. This is something I use quite a bit. I take the bed sheet and I paint it with melted clay, and I can use it as a design. It's kind of like tinfoil. But it really helps me understand. It gives me another quick design feature. See, and without having to fuss with any anatomy below it, I can just cover it up, put a blanket over it. But see, so that already gives it that Hopi thing, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we'll call that one done. Oh, I forgot one more thing I wanted to show you. Before I go to the man, speaking of the robe, get rid of that too. See how I just closed her eye? You see that? A simple gesture, closed eyes, head raised. And say that you're framing something, and this is something that is a typical kind of a thing that everybody understands and has seen in Western art and photography, and you have a sense about all of a sudden what's happening. She's either feeling the breeze coming by, she might be praying, She might, it might be windy, let's see.
Can you turn it a little bit towards this side of the room?
It might be windy, and in that case, she's gonna be holding on to her robe.
Oh, wow.
A little detail, tuck that up into her cheek. It's a little bit cold, you know. Now she's not praying, now she's just trying to stay warm. You know, maybe. Oh, let me, hold on. Put her hand back. Had it right the first time. Okay. Okay. And head down. Windy. All of this kind of is abstract, but it all is recorded in your head and it means something. Isn't it amazing? But see, it happens so darn quick. And because this isn't finished, it doesn't matter if this is finished, you get the idea. And then this little gesture, you might have noticed that I kind of have a tendency to like doing the little hand and holding on to it. But see that gives, she's kind of nurturing herself. When she tucks it in. And it's cold out, and she's just kind of holding that and it's blowing. And then she's got something over here where she might. It's kind of directionally, just kind of starting to crack the eyes a little bit, so maybe she's kind of looking out off to the side. But oh yeah. It's the thing about making art in general is that you're looking for an original design, or kind of original, because there's nothing new really. But if you invest time in an idea, you become too biased to know if it's a good idea. Because, oh God, I did all this work, I want it to work. Everybody, right? Everybody knows that. You put all those pieces down, and you can tell, you can finish it up and make it very realistic, or you can leave it loose. 99% of the beauty of it is going to be in the original shape, and that's all. That's really all this is, And so I take these ideas. The bashful look, yeah, it's kind of fun. Okay, let's see, where are we at? We're okay. I've got about another
42 minutes.
42 minutes. Okay. See what I can do in 42 minutes. Everybody's okay? Everybody's okay. All right. Yeah.
evolved as an artist? Have you gone overseas and studied other cultures or other sculpture?
Yeah, as much as I can. I haven't done any Asian trips, but we've been to Italy a few times, and we go to France, and the thing about most, like Italy, is that the traditions are so strong. They have a tendency to repeat themselves a lot. And the craftsmanship is crazy, but when I went to Italy for the first time, I went to Carrara to see where Michelangelo got his marble from and such and all that. And when I got home, I realized I didn't want to carve marble. Because they get so good at it that it's almost like a bronze in a foundry.
How would you describe the progression of your textural style, like your early works?
Yeah, that's a great one. God, that's a great question. When I was putting myself in that position of being from being a business guy to an artist, I was noticing Southwest Art had a lot of ads in it from Dave McGarry, and Dave was he did a lot of historic material, and he was the thing that people loved about his work was something maybe that a lot of artists didn't agree with, and that is that he was so realistic that they sort of were like historic dolls. And again, it's a matter of taste. I mean, it doesn't. I don't care, But he did a really excellent job. But they were the shape and the feeling of the characters were subservient to the details. The details became the important part. And that where I'm getting at here is that my first pieces were very shiny, without texture. And it was a Bernini piece, I guess, Donatello or Bernini, Rape of the Sabine. There's a hand clutching the leg of the woman and the flesh, and it's just beautiful. You feel the softness of stone, it's marble. And it occurred to me that the reason it worked is because it's marble, it's translucent, skin's translucent, it looks like skin. You do that bronze and it looks like a bumper, it doesn't work. When light hits something, it either comes off, if it's shiny, like when you take a piece of wood and you spit on it, it goes dark. The reason it goes dark is because the light is coming up directly. When it's dry, all the textures fragment the light, and what you see is all the light together is white. So that's the reason it goes lighter, and it's fuzzy. Bronze, ironically, looks softer when you put the right textures on it. Textures will break up the light. And it also adds color. See, that's a black dot. See, I don't think of it as a hole in the head, I think of it as a black dot. See that? So black and then white and then texture adds different moods and different feelings. So that was something that was real important to me to get good at, was textures. And I always pay reverence to Dave McGarry because, I have to say, that I was influenced by his knowledge of the Native American people and how he handled his career. But I'm glad I moved on from doing such, detailed work. He also painted his work too, which again was a matter of taste, but sculpture is really, shouldn't really need paint to really describe the shape and what's going on with it. Yes.
Pieces are so detailed, they're so beautiful that way. How do you decide when to put into detail?
when the detail starts destroying the piece. You know, that goes back to the Lincoln letter again. You know, apologize in advance for the length of my letter. I didn't have time to make it brief. Okay, and Lincoln was known for his beautiful letters. Why would a man say that if a long letter, a short letter is better? Eloquence is always better. What I'm doing right now is I'm just trying to get the basic size of his head based on his eyes setting here. Top of his head is okay. I'm bringing his mouth up, bringing his chin down. He's an older guy, so he's not going to have, his lips are going to be kind of tight. I'm glad we're having such a good conversation. Yeah, because this whole is moving a little bit slower than I would hope. But I can see that it's not going to matter a whole lot, I guess.
Have you ever worked on commission?
No. I might have done something that you could call a commission, I guess, but right from the beginning, I had some good advice, and the good advice was basically, when you do a commission, you're doing something for somebody else, and it's really about their story and about who they are. Just like if I've never done a monument, a commission of a monument. Monuments have a tendency to be about the subject matter, not about the artist. And the advice I got was, if you want to be known, you need to have your own thing, and you need to be careful. Your time can't be putting your time in celebrating historic characters and such. I've had people over and over again ask me about, can I do a portrait of their dog, their father, or something like that. And, life is only so long, and I just don't have time, to. Don't have time to do that. You're trying to promote your brand.
How many completed sculptures do you think you've done in your lifetime?
A weird thing is I've never counted. Isn't that weird? You'd think I would have. 150? I don't know. Sue's giving me that look. No? Not that many? Okay. No, I like to listen to, my favorite music is actually mostly classical music. You know, and I like thoughtful music. I like Rachmaninoff. You know, I love Beethoven, but you know, again, I've heard it so many times, and I get bored with it. But right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to find the volume of his face and the shape of it, where I can really describe what it is. So he's. Better get to it again. I have a really nice big nose.
So currently you're doing these figures out of your memory, obviously for feel and your memory. When you're working on a project though, do you use a photo reference for detail or is it always just?
Generally, yeah. Generally, I'm usually, if I'm working with a model, I usually will do the piece without the model, and then I'll use the model to finish up. The thing is that it adds another dimension. The model will show me something that I forgot or I didn't think of. So the model becomes kind of a collaborator in the idea. But if I use the model to start with, well, then I'm replicating what I'm seeing. And the goal of an artist is not to replicate what they're seeing; it's to have a feeling about what they're seeing and replicate the feeling. I know when I was teaching, I always go back to when I was teaching because I remember what I told people and why I told them that. They're up there with their calipers and they're measuring their model and all that. And I said, oh, that's all good, but remember, you're not doing any art until you can forget the measurements and just put something down. There's a lot of philosophical ideas about how to be an artist and stuff. There's so many different types of art. Everybody's a little bit different on how they see things. About 20 minutes or so, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other artists in your family?
I'd say the best artist in my family is Hillary. She's still next to Mom over there. Yeah, she's always had the natural ability, always. But her curse is that she's also a good businesswoman, and she knows how to make money. So I don't blame her, but no, she's pretty good. She could probably do everything I'd do if she decided that was what she wanted to do. And her daughter, my youngest granddaughter, is probably going to do well. And then we have Maya's 22. She's in an art school in Savannah right now. she's going to be interested in doing design work and stuff, you know. So yeah, it does kind of run in the family, I suppose. It's not as obvious as you might think, but it does run in the family. I think the idea of having a talent is one thing, but there's a lot of ways to do it. When Hillary was in school, he was taking anthropology and history, and she got out of school and graduated, and then she went to culinary school and became a chef, opened up a catering company. And so to me, though, it's the same thing. It's just exactly the same thing as being an artist, and I really equated it like that. Still equate it like that.
John, you may have mentioned yesterday, you were telling your story, but, and I may not have heard this, from 18 to 42, when you were running your business, did you do any artwork at all?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing too, because it's sometimes even hard for me to believe, but the answer is no. I didn't. I didn't. I had a reverence towards it, when I started, when I knew that that's what I was going to be, and I was frightened of it. And it was a dream that was so good that what would happen if I gave birth to my dream and it didn't work? I've not only lost my ambition to be an artist, but I've lost my dream. It scared the hell out of me, really. And so,
You created a 24-year black hole.
yeah, well, in a way I did, yeah, in a way I did. That's a good way of putting it. I did, in a way I did, yeah. And Sue and I have talked about that, and we both agree that had I started my career, you know, in earnest in 19, when I quit doing my art, I probably would have screwed up things so much that I probably wouldn't have a place to start right now. But I started with a clean slate. And the reason I wasn't doing the art is that I always felt that art wasn't, I didn't find it as enjoyable. I found it more like I was building something. And I had a reverence to it, and I didn't feel that I should trifle with it. The first pieces I did, I didn't classify them as fine art, I classified them as craft. And I did these wall sculptures, and they were made out of resin. And as a crutch to my attitude about it, I thought of them as crafty. And I wanted to be around real artists and stuff, but I didn't consider myself a real artist at that point. And then finally, I had a few people say, you know, I recognize your work from a mile away. You have a style. And I go, I have a style. Tell me about my style. I didn't know I had a style. I said, yeah, it's kind of broken. It always twists in the same direction, and it does this and it does that. And I went, wow, that's interesting. But that was the key.
Everything happened for a reason, and you started when you were supposed to.
Well, yeah.
I remember yesterday, there was that hole in there.
Yes.
It's completely absent of art.
Yes, and that's, yeah. But I also accomplished other things. That the 19-year-old me certainly didn't understand how to create an audience. And I know about an audience now. And it all depends on how you look at your art. Some people don't give the audience that much credit. To me, the audience is everything, because art is a way of communicating, and without your audience, you're talking to yourself. And to me, that doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like that's the way it ought to be.
At least you get an expert advice.
Well, life is a great challenge, and this whole journey that I've managed to find myself on is definitely has a lot of angles to it that have been, I'm extremely grateful for. I can't even express how grateful I am.
How do you handle social media, and how much effort do you try to put into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that social media represents the fact that we live in an age where I can get jealous over a fellow in China that's a better sculptor than me. Well, before I couldn't do that, right? There's a Russian fellow, I can't even pronounce his name, he blows me away, you know, he works in Russia. That's social media. But like a lot of things, it can be a bad thing too. And I represented, Eric, my foundry fellow, my friend, he does a lot of my Instagram stuff. He'll post stuff for me. His hobby is kind of putting reels together. He does video stuff, and to him it's big fun. And so he'll call me and say, "Okay, look, you finished this piece. Let's do a little video thing of it." You know, and he's actually having fun with it. And I'm not in the mood. And of course, in the beginning, I didn't like the way I looked in the camera and stuff. And I go, "Am I that fat or am I that short?" Or, you know. That's one thing about being an artist, that forces you to have to know who you are, you know. And it's like, no, I got to get myself out there. And so, yeah, he's always been really, really good about that. And so, I believe in social media. I think it's all important. I think it's good. But I think just like anything, it's it'll destroy you too, obviously. Okay, where are we at? Okay, I guess I better get to that. Yeah, the fear of doing a demo in front of people, of course, is always that moment that I just went through where everything was quiet, and I'm thinking, oh God, it's like watching paint dry. It's like, what's going on here? Yeah, you need a hat.
How much time do you think to make the bonnet and the headpieces?
This, if I hadn't pre-made it, that would have happened really quick. I just used tinfoil. The last demo that I did, it was the last thing I did on the piece, and everybody went, "Wow, isn't that cool?" And it fell off. And that was fine. They got to see it, but it's like I thought, well, maybe I should. Yeah, then I just stabbed him. I thought, well, maybe I should kind of do a little prefab on that so that that doesn't happen again. But yeah. Some of the things, in practical terms, like one of my sculptures that has a warp on it like this, It's an abstract design element that I really don't spend much time on, because it's like these feathers here. The best way to do a feather, of course, is with wet clay or with warm clay, and I can kind of pinch them off. And so I'm just kind of random. Now that's not to say that they don't have to. There's a certain amount of feathers. The feathers are usually 10 inches. The head is about 10 inches, so the size of the head of the wearer. And they have a certain pattern. Feathers are have a little kind of a corkscrew thing. They bend on one side and cup on the other. And all of those things have to be thought of when you're doing it.
John, if that piece were going to be sold, would that headdress be bronze separately and then welded to the
Not necessarily. Where a piece is cut is where it can be welded together the least intrusively. So I probably would. I'd probably pick a spot like up here to cut it. This would be molded with his head, and the feathers would come up here. In the chasing process, when this is welded, because the feathers kind of have an organic feel, the chasing, which is the sculpting for the metal guy, is easy for him to match my work. So I'm always looking for places where he can match my work. Okay, and then one of the things that's missing is he's got like a baseball player, he's got the bill. The other thing that's important too is get him to turn a little bit. Get a little bit more of an attitude. Each wants to turn on its own, but the dance that I do with this microwave, some of it's really soft, some of it's too hard, and I have to just keep fussing with it. You know, that's what reminds me of cooking. Popcorn, yeah. Well, popcorn's pretty easy. Yeah, see, AI is the culmination of what reality is already. It's always there, and it allows a person to have to go even deeper than they've ever been before, because the basic part is done. We've taken everything we've ever done, and in a snapshot, AI can throw it out on your feet and say, "This is what everything has ever happened." You can write a letter to somebody and say, "Clean it up for me." And maybe I want to talk about, I'm an artist who likes to cook. Write a little synopsis on that. And I'll be damned if they won't do it, you know, and it happens in a second. See, the key to that, though, is it reminds me of my teacher when I think I was in the 9th grade, 8th grade, something like that. And the teacher said, I don't want to see any of you kids bringing those damn calculators into class. You see, AI is a lot, maybe obviously it's not like a calculator, but it was a threat. AI is really threatening. And see, the problem with being threatened like that is that Why would you let that, you can't, you're not allowed to let that stifle you. You can't, it can't be a problem. It's just another part of the landscape. And because I don't feel that, like in the art world, with like the kind of stuff I'm doing, whether it's a painting or a sculpture, I don't feel that the technical part of whether it's correct or not is what is attractive to begin with. There again, that just lays the floor mat. But my, by the way, that's the bill. I'll give him a little Indian motif here. This is Eagle Down. I say eagle down, it's a part of the feathers, the fuzzy part, that it makes you, it's kind of fun because it gives you that nice little thing that happens here.
John, yesterday you talked about how influential Ray Swanson was.
Yes.
Share a little bit about how you met.
Yes. Prescott, Arizona is Ray and Gary, his brother, were really well known in that small area, and Ray being in the cowboy artist in Prescott also was a big deal back when I first started thinking about what I wanted to do. And Joe Beeler was near Bill Owen, and Ray Swanson kind of epitomized a lot of what the CAs were about. And I hadn't really started my career too long. I don't remember exactly how long it had been, but it wasn't that long when I got a call from Ray. And he was like a real celebrity to me. Getting a call from Ray was kind of like this shocker. Wow, really? You want to talk to me about something? He goes, he says, I want you to apply to the Cowboy Arts of America. And I said, so what's your advice? And he says, well, obviously you got to bring your best work, but don't bring a horse. And I go, well, why not? And he goes, because these guys will get hung up on everything that's wrong with it, and they'll even notice whether you're a good artist or not. And that was really, I say that because it's so true. Ray was 100% right. That's what they do. They get fixated. And Ray was the, he was like a big brother to me. He really mentored me on the politics of the group and what was expected and things like that. It was really important too because I also had Bill Owen, Bill Owen kind of became aware of me when I applied for the CA. I walked in my Hawaiian shirt. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, they kind of maybe know who I am. I just didn't want to act presumptuous like I'm a real cowboy and stuff. But as it turned out, that kind of got Bill Owen going, and he took everything he could do to rib me all the time. And Ray was my sounding board. I go, so now, have I got a problem here or what? And he goes, no, you're all right. Don't worry about it. So Ray was always very important to me. And so. And of course, within the CA too, Ray was really a superstar in the meeting. He had his ideas about where we were at in our careers and stuff. Ray was very thoughtful. People listened to Ray. And Bev, and Bev and I are still, his widow, we're good friends. When Ray passed away, him and Bev always liked my piece, An Honored Life, and it seemed like that would be fitting for his gravesite. So, Martin, is Martin still there, or does he want to run away? Yeah. No, I'm trying to remember I'm not really familiar with the new guys, but there are new guys coming in.
John, how are we doing time-wise?
Dan?
4 minutes left.
4 minutes, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
there's two reasons I asked the question. One, at 1 o'clock, the guys are coming to pick up your stage. Number two, the stomachs that are growling out here are starting to get quite loud.
Okay. All right. Well, this is the last. This will be the last minute. Let me take his ears out here.
Isn't it amazing what he can do in 2 hours? We've seen 3 sculptures.
Yeah.
And the first time, John, you did this, I don't know if you'll remember, but I said to you afterwards, you know, John, maybe it's not smart to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, when people see how easily you
Yeah.
turn a piece of clay into sculpture, and then they see the price you're asking for it, they might give us a hard time about it, but it hasn't been a barrier. By the way, this greeter, John, tell them about the first greeter and the reason, you know, the initial reason for it.
Yeah. The impetus for that piece came from a tour that I was on at the Leading Tree Museum in Colorado with the National Sculpture Society. One of our members, who was our treasurer, commented on one of my pieces, which was a depiction of one of Catlin's pieces, and he was admiring it, and then he said, you know, I have him, you know. And I said, no, you don't. I know where they all are. And he says, no, he says, I don't mean the sculpture, I have Catlin. Turned out that our treasurer is the president of Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, where Catlin was buried. The other part of the story is that Catlin got crosswise with his in-laws, and when it came time to bury him in their family plot, they tried to keep him out. So when he was finally buried, the grave wasn't marked. In the 60s, they put a little headstone on, but the bottom line is this. The president of Greenwood said, we need to fix that. Let's come up with something. And so I came up with the idea of black moccasin, because it was recorded that black moccasin, when he met George Catlin, he wanted to know who Long Knife and Yellow Hair were doing. And he said 30 years ago, I was the first one to greet them when they came up the Missouri River. So basically, what's happened here is the large version of this is on Catlin's grave. Okay, so he's got a little jewelry. He's got a couple of beads right around here like that. He's also got some stuff hanging off of his war bonnet. Let's put that on real quick. Hopefully they don't carry the stage off while I'm doing it. And then and some feathers. One of the things too that I like to talk about, the feathers and the stuff come off are quick ways of augmenting the design. As this comes down like this and this comes up, I can do these like little sharp points. They're not feathers to me, they're just sharp points. And they slow the eye down. And then in the middle here, he's got a circle. And that circle would be a peace medallion. So it would be something that Lewis and Clark had handed out.
Would you mind turning him a little bit more?
Yeah. And so that gives a little circle. That gives a little circle.
Great.
And then of course he's got
Right on time, John. It's
Oh,
wonderful.
I know. Yeah. Wait a minute. He's got some hair. He's got a piece of hair flying.
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
That's amazing.
Now he's going to take it to Foundry, and he'll be for sale in a month or so. Okay.
John, turn him this way a little bit, John.
Great.
Fantastic, John.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay, yeah, thanks for letting me do this.
Does he have a name?
Greatly appreciated.